Hello. I want to use the next minutes to invite you to understand your brain a little bit better and to realize why that understanding is crucial for the future of humanity on this planet. So a lot to take in 11 or 12 minutes, and a very humble title of my presentation that you already see this is It's All in Our Head, realizing that true sustainability is the only chance we have. As I've already been said, I'm a neuroscientist. So, of course, I need to start by showing you a brain. In fact, I have a very intimate relationship with the one you see here because it's a picture of my brain. But I'm not showing you this picture only to brag about my beautiful brain, but also to highlight the fact that every brain looks different. In fact, if I would put MRI scans like the one you see here from my brain of all your brains next to each other, you'd easily spot many differences between them. That is, without any training in radiology, medicine, or neuroscience. And this brings me to the third and last aspect, why I'm showing you this picture. Because all brains are different, we all see, hear, smell, taste, and feel the world in different ways. And because I cannot take my brain and put it into somebody else's head in order to let that person perceive what I perceive, there's really only one way I can inform others about my thoughts, perceptions, and feelings. Yes, via communication, often verbally, but also in many other ways. And everybody who has ever tried to communicate with others knows for sure a lot can go wrong. In fact, so horribly wrong that we, as humans and humanity, are experiencing many crises and conflicts. There's the refugee crisis, there's still a pandemic keeping us busy, there's war in Europe, and of course, there's the climate emergency, which no longer needs to be depicted by polar bears on melting ice sheets or people dying either because of killing heat or killing floods somewhere far away. No, also in Europe, we can now use local pictures like the one you see here from the devastating flood in Germany last summer. Importantly, we need to realize that all these crises are connected and that the overarching question really is, how do we want to live together? Now, you might think, who am I to come up with such a claim and question? Well, it wasn't me who came up with it, and maybe I can increase your trust into the conclusion I just shared with you by quoting the very person who is in charge of the United Nations, the institution that was built to let people and nations work together for a better future. So a couple of weeks ago, Antonio Guterres said, or rather tweeted, the following: "The climate crisis is the #1 emergency. Renewables not only fight the climate crisis, they support energy security. Renewables are the peace plan of the 21st century." So, we know this. Humanity knows this. It's not some kind of secret or something people are telling each other behind closed doors. And what do we do about it? We do the opposite. Like a kid that's not told to climb the cupboard or not to touch the hot tub. What do I mean by that? Well, let me show you a picture, or rather graph, that illustrates the paradox we live perfectly. Here you see the global CO2 emissions from energy combustion and industrial processes between 1900 and 2021. And what shall I say? Hooray! Last year we broke the record and reached a new high, emitting more than 36 gigatons CO2. But leaving the cynicism aside about this record, you probably have no clear idea what that means. And you're not alone with that, because it is well documented how poorly our brain is able to process large numbers, especially when it comes to abstract things like CO2 emissions. So some clever humans came up with ways to calculate the so-called carbon budget that is still left to be relatively certain to stay below a certain level of global warming. And without going into too much detail, today we have 6 years, 10 months and 6 days left, and a few hours and seconds, to bring our emissions to zero if we want to be 67% certain to stay below the 1.5 degree limit. The 1.5 degree limit that we, humanity, globally agreed to in Paris in 2015 in the famous Paris Agreement. I cannot help myself and ask us all, are we completely insane? Or more precisely, why are we collectively destroying the very basic of our existence? Because we've been telling ourselves the wrong stories about what and who is important, and have thus implemented societal structures and incentives that misguided our ideas about what we should focus on, what we attend to, and what we spend our time with. That might sound lofty, you might think now. So let me ask you an important question. What is the most important currency in the world? No, it's not money. And again, no, it's also not energy. The one thing we truly need is food. So the most important currency is, or should be, calories. Or to put it slightly more elegant, despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact it rains. So we got that straight, and you might think and feel slightly different about your next visit to the supermarket, the next time you see a farmer working late at night, or the next time you mindlessly eat in front of 2 or 3 screens. But most importantly, now that we got the facts straight, we can ask the most vital question. What now? Where do we go from here? And before we decide on that, I want to invite you to value and embrace your truly magnificent brain a bit better. Because even though it, together with its colleagues, put us in this rather tricky situation we are now in, our brains also hold the solution to get us out. Because even though we have all these cognitive biases that sometimes or often let us do things that are neither good for us nor for anybody else, we also have this ever-changing organ in our head. What do I mean by that? Well, you might have heard or even said yourself, I can't do that, I'm too old for that. Or I can't change because I'm too old for that. But that's nonsense. That's fake news, so to say, because our brain is changing all our life. Thus, do we want to change is the wrong question to ask. Instead, the only question we can and should ask is, how do we want to change? Because our brains change no matter what until the last synapse has gone silent. Every thought changes your brain. And because that is the underlying biology of my claim that it's all in our head, I want to give you yet another thought. This even that every thought is changing our brain. So coming back to communication and its fundamental role for our existence, I am changing your brains right now, given the fact that you listen to me, maybe see me, and so on. So where do we go from here? I suggest we finally leave the static thinking behind that brought us here and embrace what I call dynamic thinking, using our ever-changing brain in a more conscious, a more self-determined, heck yes, a freer way. And this comes with 3 ingredients where I want to end. First, we can focus on the what now, or we should focus on the what now by asking better questions. It changes our brain and our perspective when we think and talk about what for instead of against what we are. It enables us to think about the future we so desperately need to create in a sustainable and healthy way. And that brings me to the second ingredient of the dynamic thinking. In order to do this, in order to ask this what for, we need to redefine groups. And instead of playing endless blame games, looking for scapegoats, discriminating and excluding on our way, we should always ask the question, what do we share? What do we have in common? What connects us? And there's always something, believe me. And that brings me to the last and final and third ingredient of the dynamic thinking. If we start doing that, and that is if we really truly ask ourselves what connects us to the others, we automatically tell new stories, not only the ones around the campfire, the ones in the theaters and in Hollywood, but also the stories we tell each other about what a good life means, about what we truly need, and about what makes the human animal successful. A story that we are social animals that depend on each other and on a few inches of soil and some rain. Thank you very much.